Welcome back, America. We are going to have an explosive show for you today. You are going to be on the edge of your seat with this one because I got to tell you, when I got this call earlier this week here for the Sara Carter Show, it's an old source of mine, somebody who I have spoken with on a number of occasions, works on the southern border, U.S. southern border with Mexico, is somebody that I trust implicitly, and somebody that was part of the documentary we did for the foundation, the Dark Wire Investigation Foundation, that we did our documentary on, Not in Vain. That's VEINUSA.com. You could see the documentary there. It's Patricia Cramer. By the way, she is the president of the Arizona chapter of the National Treasury Employee Union, which represents U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers and agricultural specialists at the Arizona ports of entries. And why is this so important? Why is she so important? Because at the ports of entry is different than the Border Patrol agents who are serving on the front lines in between the ports of entry. These are the folks that are at the ports of entry that watch the people cross back and forth. They're in charge of so much money and commerce that goes across, as well as targeting drug cartels that are trying to bring narcotics into our country, and the regular folks that just go back and forth across these ports of entry, these POEs, right? Do you know what's happening there? Wait until she tells you. Guess what? While we're on lockdown at home, while we're trying to mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 corona Wuhan virus, Wuhan, let's just say it, Wuhan Chinese Communist Party virus, while we are all on lockdown, while 26 million Americans have applied for unemployment, the ports of entry are allowing people to crisscross back and forth to vet appointments, to visit grandma and grandpa, to buy food at restaurants, to make vet appointments, and no one is stopping them. I didn't know this. I don't even think President Donald Trump understands what is happening there. I don't know if people have told him this, that while we are all on lockdown, people in the United States, this is not just traffic coming from Mexico, people in the United States who have legal authority to be here, who are citizens or green card holders, are crisscrossing the border like it's nothing. And guess what's happening on the other side of the border? On the U.S. side, we know what's happening. We are all on lockdown, right? We're being told, stay in your homes. Don't, converge with people at your homes. Don't have parties. People are getting fined. There are drones flying over our skies by law enforcement. This is true. Look it up. I'm not making anything up here. They are flying over in areas where police officers can't frequent as much, to ensure that you aren't having a party or a barbecue at your house with other people, or you will be fined, in some places as much as $1,000. There was a woman at a park in Idaho that was literally handcuffed because she took her kids to an outdoor park. However, people are crossing back and forth all along the roughly 2,000 mile border with Mexico, from all the way from California through Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. I cover this area. This has been a large part of my life, my career as a journalist. In fact, over the past year, I've been to Central America a number of times, to Guatemala, down to the border. I've covered many stories there because of the dangers at the border. Not only are Customs and Border Protection officers dealing with possible exposure, which, by the way, there's quite a few people that have already been exposed to this virus. Now, she's going to go into details about that because the numbers have fluctuated and changed. But we've got 9 U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers in El Paso with COVID. We have 4 in San Ysidro. I heard those numbers might be higher. In Laredo, Texas, 6. We've got 1 in Brownsville and another 1 in Hidalgo County. I've been to all of these areas along the border, spent a lot of time there. And our officers are being exposed. And guess what's happening in Mexico? In some of these places, in some of these cities along the U.S. southern border, it's exploding. COVID-19 infections are spreading. Some hospitals have actually had to close down in Mexico along the U.S. southern border because of doctors and nurses that have been infected. In other areas like Juarez, right now the numbers in Juarez, and I'm going to try to get you roughly about the right numbers, but what they're saying is 33 people have died in Juarez of coronavirus and over 500 maybe infections there, but those numbers are all fluctuating because even the Mexican government can't test, doesn't have the right testing, doesn't have the ability to even, and they've said this is under President Manuel López Obrador, AMLO. He has been saying that we're shutting down these businesses. People have got to go home, but they can't control this, folks. In Mexico, they can't. The federal government, los federales, like they like to say. I used to throw my little bit of Spanish there just because, I don't practice it enough. My mom taught me from when I was a child. Full disclosure, I speak it fluently. And I've traveled many times into this region, and it is deadly and dangerous. And right now, the drug cartels are taking advantage of this COVID-19 spread, and the Mexican government can't control it. Remember, a lot of the businesses on the other side of the border, they're going to stay open. First of all, people don't have money. One, they need to keep their businesses open or they want to, and they're not going to listen. Two, you've got drug cartels managing situations there where they're laundering money. And a lot of the people in these businesses along the U.S.-Mexico border are in the pocket of the drug cartels. So are the law enforcement officials over there, not all of them, and the federal officials, as well as, remember, and I've broken a number of stories on this early in my career, Mexican military officials and people within the government. So we're dealing with that. We're dealing with that on top of COVID. But why is our border wide open? Why, if we're here at home having to be on lockdown, I keep saying this over and over again, I'm giving Safeway a lot of advertisement because that's where I go. I go to Safeway in my neighborhood. That's my little short trip. I drive to Safeway, pick up my groceries. I go in through one door. They monitor how many people go into the Safeway. I've got to wear my mask on my face, right? I don't have to. But everybody else is wearing their mask, and I have my mask. And when I didn't wear it, people were looking at me like I was like violating some kind of social norm. So bizarre. But I get it. People are scared. I don't want to. I want to do the best I can to help mitigate this virus. I want to follow those instructions. I want to do the best. But there's a lot of questions I have about this virus. And one of them is that U.S.-Mexico southern border of ours and the people that are jumping back and forth. And I'm opening up here my other little laptop because I want to read to you from a story from The Guardian. I'm not going to read you the whole story, but I'm going to give you the gist of it. That it's Mexican criminal groups see COVID-19 crisis as an opportunity to gain more power. Patricia Cramer talks to me about this openly, and she talks about the lack of responsibility within our own federal government. She points the finger right at the Department of Homeland Security, as well as others. And I'll let her do that. From taking this crisis seriously and exposing those U.S. Customs and Border Patrol officers, as well as Border Protection officers that are working at our ports of entry. What's going on here? Going back to this story in The Guardian. Men with assault rifles stand guard as their colleagues hand out plastic bags of groceries from a pickup truck to a crowd of mostly older women. Off screen, the man recording the mobile phone footage announces that 8 packages came from a local crime boss who runs things here. In the city of, and I'm not going to pronounce the city correctly, it's a native name. It's probably Azteca, or it's from Michoacan. So in the city's Mexican western state of Michoacan, Apatzigan is the name of this city. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. So here we have, the drug cartels taking advantage of places inside Mexico, all the way up to Michoacan, along our U.S.-Mexico border, along the border of Douglas, Arizona with Agua Prieta, Sasabe in Arizona, Juarez, Texas, which Juarez, Mexico, which borders El Paso, Texas. And we are allowing not just, I mean, I'm all for allowing commerce to come through. We need to. There are supplies that come through there that are absolutely necessary for the United States right now, by the way, including possibly medical supplies, food, everything else. But why are people allowed to crisscross back and forth like this? Why? What is going on here that I don't understand? What is going on here that you don't understand? I can't even fathom why this is happening when we are on lockdown, because they can stop the traffic from going into Mexico. You can't stop Americans from coming back, but you can stop them from going, you know, in areas that are obviously dealing with outbreaks of coronavirus, COVID-19, Wuhan virus, Chinese Communist Party virus. Let's be correct about this. CCP virus. This is what it is all over the globe. Well, we're going to ask those questions. And if you're listening, President Trump, I mean, this is very serious. There needs to be some kind of communication with Department of Homeland Security as to why this is happening right now. And, you know, the officers that I talked to, U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers, as well as Border Patrol agents that are working in the field, they praise this administration. They say for the first time they have an administration that actually cares about them. They have a president that actually cares about them, that cares about securing the border. But what we are seeing right now and what we are dealing with right now at that U.S.-Mexico border is very frightening. I can tell you this from experience. I've covered this border. I've been in Mexico many times. In fact, one time it was so terrifying. I wasn't sure I was going to make my way back out when I was in Nuevo Laredo. You know, it was very frightening.
Why?
Oh, it was. Oh, and that's Adam, by the way.
Yeah, I need to know. I mean, can you tell us what happened?
Well, it's pretty frightening. I had gone in there. I was covering a number of stories. In fact, it was a time period where we had broken a number of stories on the U.S.-Mexico border when I was at the Daily Bulletin and working with the Los Angeles News Group. And I was going back and forth with a source into Nuevo Laredo. It was at a time when the Sinaloa cartel and Los Zetas were in armed battles inside the city. I mean, to the point where they actually used like a bazooka on one of the homes where the Sinaloa assassins were living. I was trying to conduct interviews and get the truth out because the Mexican government had said they had sent in federal officers, which was only for a day or two, and then they moved them out. Mexican military just left because the local police force was in the pocket of Los Zetas. And the Zetas are paramilitary organization, you know, of drug dealers that were battling for this turf. And I had a source inside there. I did talk about the fact that this source was a press person from Mexico, and that's all I will say. Their facility was targeted by the Mexican drug cartels, El Mañana news organization, and people were killed and people were wounded. And while we were there, we were being followed. And there was one time when I went in and we were actually being tracked, and there were young men on motorcycles, and the person that I was with, I gave him the nickname Paco. Paco was terrified. He was such an enormously important person in my life, somebody that I loved dearly. And eventually he came to the United States. I want to say that because of the assistance that he gave the U.S. with these cartels. But he really thought that we were going to die that day. They were following us on motorcycles. Fortunately, at one point in time, we heard gunfire in another part of town. They retreated from following us. He was sweating in the car. You know, he was like, Sarah, this is it. You know, we're not going to make it. And when they retreated, we made our way out of the city. Apparently there was a gun battle and they were called in for that. So it was fate.
Wow.
But it was pretty frightening. There are some moments where I look back and I think, wow, those were really tough times. I mean, getting those stories out were not easy. And the people that I was dealing with were real heroes in my book. People that were willing to stand up to the drug cartels. And a lot of people have lost their lives. But I'm telling you this, what is happening in the United States at that border? Adam, Jenny Terr is here. She's with the podcast too, writes incredible stories on SaraCarter.com. Please see the latest stories there. But what's happening, this is just unacceptable. And this is the reason why I brought Patricia Cramer on the show and why we have to have these voices on the show. I'm going to pull this up because I don't want to introduce her incorrectly because, there's a division inside the DHS. When we're dealing with the unions aren't always the same. So Patricia Cramer, she's the president of the Arizona chapter of the National Treasury Employee Union, representing U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers and agricultural specialists at the Arizona ports of entry. So she focuses mainly on the Arizona ports of entry, but full disclaimer, I've been talking to sources too in Texas who support everything and have said exactly the same thing that Patricia is telling me. And she is going to tell you on this show. And it's explosive. And I am so grateful to have people that are brave enough to stand up and tell the truth and put their name on it. This is not just a source. This is Patricia Cramer, and she's here with us today. Patricia, thank you so much for being here at the Sara Carter Show. I know you and I have known each other for some time, and I've done a number of stories with you. You were also in my documentary, Not in Vain. That's VEIN, and you guys can find that at notinvainusa.com if you want to see more of Patricia there, because your work is phenomenal. You spend so much time defending the rights of U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers at the ports entry in the United States. And I want you to explain a little bit to people before we go into the meat of why I brought you on here today, because this is an explosive story. Explain the job, explain what the people do, and explain the difference between, the Border Patrol, CBP, and what the officers do at Customs and the ports of entry.
Well, first of all, Sara, thank you for having me on your show. You've always given U.S. Customs a great platform, and we really appreciate it. What Customs does is that we are the ones that secure the ports of entry, right? So we work at the ports of entry dealing with a lot of different things, right? From catching, narcotics, seizing illicit money, weapons, ammo, and also catching illegal immigration on top of facilitating the legal traffic that comes into the country. We also process trade into the country, and we produce a lot of revenue through trade. So a lot of the fruits and vegetables that you see at the supermarket, a lot of products have actually come through the ports of entry where Customs has processed it. And we are the second revenue producing agency for the government, second to IRS. But, our job is very complex, and we deal with a whole bunch of stuff. And then Border Patrol, they secure the border in between the ports of entry. That is their job.
Right. So a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand there's two separate entities there, both working for the same goal, right? To protect the United States. I mean, that's your first mandate, right? Is to ensure that those borders are secure. And now dealing with coronavirus and COVID-19. And by the way, this isn't just a little bit of money. The money that comes through economically, the economic aspect of Customs and Border Protection is huge. I mean, we're talking in the trillions, right? In the trillions of dollars, billions, hundreds of billions. Am I right on trillions, or am I off on that? Or is it trillions?
No, it's in the trillions, Sara. You are absolutely correct about that. We collect a lot of revenue. So U.S. Customs provides not only border security, but economic security as well. And right now, with the COVID, with the airports, our money is already going down because of the COVID-19, and not, a lot of the traffic, especially in the airports, airports and the northern border has pretty much seized. So we're already taking a hit economically through the ports of entry.
Now let's talk about the southern border, because that's your area. You're, Arizona, you understand it. Also Texas, New Mexico, you really run the gamut, but you're in Arizona. There's an issue, and I've been talking to others as well, people that you've put me in touch with, other border and customs protection officers out there, that the traffic has not stopped along the U.S. southern border due to COVID. And this is a very serious concern, not only for the officers there, but explain what this traffic is. I don't think you guys out there are going to believe this until Patricia says it. That's why I wanted her on the show. That's why I wanted her face here, so that you will see what is going on. Even though you're hearing all of this, talk out of Washington that everything has stopped, explain what's going on the U.S. southern border.
Well, if anyone was to come down to the U.S.-Mexico border, they would never think there was a pandemic going on. Sarah, you think life is just normal, and unfortunately, it's a lot of U.S. citizens and green card holders that are going back and forth into Mexico, to get tacos, to get haircuts, to go to nail salons, to go to vet appointments. I mean, non-essential stuff. And if you were to see every border town that we border with in Mexico, you would see that their cases of COVID is blowing up. Mexicali, San Luis, Rio Colorado, I mean, they're all blowing up in COVID cases. I have a port in San Luis, Arizona, and their traffic has actually increased. And, there's 4-6 hour waits. My local management has tried to do everything they can to help the officers, but there's only so much they can do. And they're just as concerned as I am about this. The problem here is that the DHS Secretary, Chad Wolf, and the Acting Commissioner, Mark Morgan, can do a lot more to protect the country and protect the front line. And it's not happening because we keep allowing these reckless people to go back and forth. Constitutionally, we can't deny their entry. That is very true. But under a national emergency, we can stop their exit from the country. And this is up to the DHS secretary, and it's not happening, Sarah. And we have to preserve the front line, because could you imagine if the front line, and it's already cracking, you've got 9 cases in El Paso, you have 7 cases in Laredo, now
right. And let me say this. Those are U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers that work at these ports of entry. That's what she's talking about here, folks. She's talking about the people that are actually working at the ports of entry. These are the numbers. Can you go over those numbers one more time? How many are infected?
Yes, so there's 9 in El Paso. I believe there's 4 in San Isidro. There's 3 in Calexico, 7 in Laredo, 1 in Hidalgo, 1 in Brownsville. By the grace of God, the ports of Arizona have not been hit with any cases. We've come close calls. Some have been close calls, but we haven't had a case yet. But honestly, Sarah, I think that it's only a matter of time, especially when you have a place like San Luis, who borders San Luis, Rio Colorado. And yesterday they announced on the news that San Luis, Rio Colorado closed their general hospital because their nurses and doctors are all infected, and they've already had a death with a doctor. So they had to close the hospital up. Where do you think that the people that are getting sick in Mexico are going to go next? They're going to come to the ports of entry to ask for a humanitarian type of parole to go use our medical facilities, when our medical facilities are already struggling, with equipment, with beds, so it's going to take a catastrophic effect on us. And again, if the front line, as far as U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers start falling ill, I mean, this is also going to put the border security in jeopardy, and also economic security, because processing cargo isn't something simple. There's a lot of training behind that. And so you can't just get Joe Schmo from the street to replace the job, the very important job that we do. And I can assure you, Sarah, that I really truly believe that if the president knew exactly what was going on at the border, I think that a lot of things would change. We support the president and how he feels about border security and how strongly he feels about securing our country. And I don't believe that the DHS secretary is telling him exactly, because him himself, I don't think really knows what's going on at the southern border.
No, I believe that the president believes that it's shut down, that there is no traffic actually moving to Mexico other than commerce. You're not asking to shut down commerce. You're asking that regular citizens that are just making trips over the border to go see grandma, to get their nails done, to go to a vet visit, to do some elective dental work or something, be stopped for now, right? Is that what that's what you're asking?
Exactly, Sarah, exactly. You know, people are, we can come out and make public announcements, but at the end of the day, the agency, under national emergency has a lot more power to put a stop to this. The DHS secretary could send a directive down saying, from now on, we're not going to allow people to exit the country if they're going to go visit grandma, get tacos, nail appointments, vet appointments. He has the power to do that by the stroke of a pen, and he's not doing it, Sarah. Like you said, trade is very important. Why? Because the American citizen is the one that benefits from us processing trade. Well, what's going to happen when we all start falling ill, to this? And if one of us fall ill, there has to be about 20 of us quarantined because we all work together in close proximity. And again, Sarah, my local management, my director of field operations, which is the head honcho in Arizona, Guadalupe Ramirez, and the port directors at the ports of entry, I assure you, have done as much as they can. The assistant commissioner, Todd Owen, he has done as much as he can. I've done my research. This is falling on the DHS secretary and acting commissioner Mark Morgan not taking action. And I'm telling you, Sarah, we're going to get hit with a tidal wave of COVID-19 from Mexico. The southern border is going to be the next New York City if they don't do something.
I absolutely believe that. And we're seeing numbers come out. I saw the numbers yesterday from Juarez, Mexico. This borders El Paso. And those numbers, they don't believe are totally accurate. But we have 33 deaths in Juarez and over 300 infections, I believe, maybe close to 500. But those numbers are fluctuating because even the Mexican government isn't able to manage all of these statistics. And some people are getting very sick. They're at home. It's just like the United States, where some people don't have access to testing, and they're not testing everyone because they just don't have access to the testing. If we don't, Mexico doesn't, right? So you've got all of these border communities. I want you all to think about what Patricia is saying here. We are all on lockdown. But for some reason, the DHS, Mark Morgan, and all these folks are letting people travel back and forth into communities along the border that are, exploding right now in some areas with COVID-19. That is insanity. That is insanity.
Sarah. It's scary. It's scary. I'm not just worried and scared as a officer myself, but I'm scared as a U.S. citizen to see what is going on. And I could tell you that the officers are showing up every single day to do our job, and to protect our country. And the very least that the agency can do is protect us. And they're failing us, Sarah, not just us, the whole country, because you can't trust Mexico. I'm a Mexican American, first generation. I lived in Mexico growing up. Sarah, I'm telling you firsthand that a lot of people don't have the resources to go to a hospital. The government funding hospitals are nightmares. Okay. They're, understaffed, they don't have the equipment. So Mexico, obviously they've proven throughout history that they cannot be trusted at all. It's the drug cartels that run the show. Right now, our enemies don't rest, Sarah. They don't. Right? Our mission is terrorist, drug cartels, narcotics, and any form that, the enemy takes is our mission to fight. And our enemies never rest. So if people don't think that our enemies are watching us like a hawk right now because they already know that we're cracking, they're wrong. And that's what scares us. We're trying to be out there and be vigilant that COVID or no COVID, to protect our country. And the agency is failing us, not the president. The agency is failing us, not
this is
the
incredible.
Side.
Well, let me ask you this, Patricia, because I know this question is going to come up. When people travel back into the United States, are they tested? Is their temperature taken? Are they quarantined? Is there anything that, the DHS officials can say, well, no, because we quarantine everybody coming back in when they cross the border? What happens when people cross back in?
Nothing, Sarah, nothing. At the southern border, nothing. They get, they go right in. We don't know if they're infected. We don't know where they were in Mexico. I mean, you can ask them, but, we have no way of knowing. We're not taking temperatures. We're not really doing even the minimal. I mean, the minimal would be to take temperatures. I know that there were certain cities or towns in Mexico that were taking people's temperature when they were coming in. I believe their airports were. We're doing zero, Sarah.
Why,
Zero.
Patricia? Why? What is going on that we are not doing our job there when the president and everybody else is on lockdown? We're all on lockdown. People are saying you can't even get into a grocery store now without a mask. In Washington, D.C., the police will come up to you and basically tell you to put a mask on your face. Here in Virginia, we could just walk around our neighborhood. Everybody's in masks. I'm lucky if I get to Safeway. I've said this over and over again. I'm lucky if I get to Safeway. And yet people are crisscrossing the border like, hey, no problem, in areas that are obviously, there's obviously epidemics spreading in those communities along the U.S. southern border.
Mm-hmm. And we want to know why, too, Sarah, because we don't understand it. We're the United States of America. We're the most powerful country in the world. We have a great president that believes in putting America first and securing our borders. So why isn't the DHS secretary taking, measures, being proactive? This agency has always been known, no matter what president, to be retroactive, not proactive. And there's so many things they could do to protect us. How is it, Sarah, that you and I, as U.S. citizens, we can't travel to California, we can't travel to New York, we can't travel to Hawaii? Oh, but if you want to travel to Mexico, go ahead all day long, no problem, as many times as you want, back and forth. And how does that make sense, Sarah? How does that make sense? How is the DHS secretary sleeping at night? I'm not sleeping at night knowing that this is going on. And that's why I'm reaching out to people like you to let the country know that at the U.S.-Mexico border, there is nothing that is being done, and there's more that can be done. And it's allowing us to stop people outbound from their reckless, non-essential trips that they're making into Mexico when Mexico is blowing up in COVID cases. And they don't, they're saying that, we close restaurants and hair salons. Sarah, it's not true. They don't enforce it. People are still crossing because restaurants are open, hair salons are open, nail salons are open, vets are open. And, if they, we have the obligation to protect the country. And by protecting the country, stopping these reckless people from traveling back and forth. We have that right. We have that power under national emergency, and the DHS secretary is not doing it, and he's not restricting this non-essential travel, and he can do it. He can do it.
Absolutely he can. Absolutely he can. And I'm sure, hopefully, and I if the president is listening to this, President Trump, maybe that's the very first phone call that needs to come from the White House is straight to the DHS secretary to ask why this is not being enforced. Because both you and I, Patricia, we both know based on my work in Mexico, based on the work that you have done, the exemplary work that you have done, and the sacrifices made by all of the people that work along the U.S. southern border, is what happens in Mexico. Well, the drug cartels are in control of a lot of these communities on the other side of the border, right? Along the southern border. Those restaurants are staying open. Those salons are staying open. Why? Because they're laundering mechanisms, too. For drug money. They're not going to shut them down. They're not just going to shut them down. Maybe some, but not all. And we're frequenting there.
Yes. And to give you something more shocking, Sarah, when you think what I have said is not shocking enough. What is also happening is the narcotics that we are catching, right? These smugglers that we are catching.
Talk about that. Yeah. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, you get arrested for kayaking on the beach. But if you smuggle drugs into the U.S., you're not, they're not going to put you in jail. They're just going to defer your case for later. Good luck if that drug smuggler shows up in court. Okay, but right now they're not doing anything other than just deferring the case because they don't want to put anybody in jail or in prison. So these people are pretty much just walking away after they've smuggled fentanyl, meth, cocaine, heroin. Since they're not taking anyone into the jails, then of course that the drug cartels know this, and they're going to be smuggling more drugs, through U.S. citizens and LPRs. Not all, of course, but the people that are involved, and take advantage of the fact that, oh, what's the worst that's going to happen? Oh, I'm just going to get caught, but I'm going to be let go. So because they're not taking anybody right now, and deferring the prosecution. So, I mean,
so basically, if you're kayaking along the river, or you're in Texas and you're out at a park, you shouldn't be, you'll get fined. You're an American citizen, you'll get fined, you'll be told to disperse, you could end up in cuffs for a little while. We've seen that at some parks. But if you're a drug dealer and you're moving stuff across, they can't put you in a jail for long enough because they don't want the spread of COVID, or they don't want, so they kick you free? Is that what you're saying? They kick you, defer you for later, prosecution for later?
Mm-hmm. Yes, they defer your prosecution, and I mean, call me crazy, Sarah, but I don't think drug smugglers are going to show up to the case. I don't think so yeah, I don't see
about that.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty confident they're not going to show up. I mean, if you're smuggling drugs into the U.S., you're not going to show up for your court date. And so, the cartels know that. So more than ever, we have to be vigilant, because I can assure you that they are trying to smuggle a lot more now, knowing that, the state and locals are not going to do anything and let them walk free. And that's pretty scary, Sarah. And I hope the president is listening. And, if he is, Sarah, I'd love to tell him that,
tell him.
Yeah, to tell him straight from the troops that are on the ground what's going on. But, also to tell him that, we're so grateful that he's our president right now, that he's doing a great job. And, I pray for him every single day. And I am more than happy to tell him myself and have him come down to the southern border and show him with his very own eyes what is going on. And again, Sarah, this is no blame on the U.S. Customs side of the house in DHS. This is DHS Secretary Chad Wolf and Acting Commissioner Mark Morgan not taking the appropriate action to protect our country.
Wow, Patricia, I thank you so much for being here today, because I don't think the American people truly understand what is happening. And this is why I wanted you on the show. I want them to see and hear what is actually happening at the U.S. southern border. I mean, I think the focus has been so much on, COVID this, what's happening in the states, how is New York handling it, Governor Cuomo's, long, drawn out press conferences, the president's 2-hour, but the reality of what's happening on the ground. The reality of what is happening on the ground is not reaching Washington. They don't realize what is happening. And I tell you this, once I absolutely believe this. Once President Trump knows and hears from you directly and hears from the people at the border what is going on there, he is going to be furious, because that is not something that I believe he even knows is happening right now. And everyone's basically ignoring this.
Yes. And, as CBP officers, Sarah, as customs officers, we all believe in the president. We all believe in what he's trying to do in border security, and we support him, because finally we have a president that is trying to clean up all the loopholes and the weak, system that's been in place that has not allowed us to do our job. President Trump, the things that he has wanted to do on the border, he's not creating new laws on his own. He's actually trying to apply laws that have existed for many, many, many years that presidents in the past have not allowed us to enforce. And by enforcing those laws, finally, it'll make our country much safer. So I agree with you. I think that if the president knew what's going on in the U.S.-Mexico border, oh my God, Sarah, I think that our country would be 10 times more secure, and the cartel would be, it'd be a huge hit for the cartel, knowing that the president is now coming down and seeing what's going on. I can assure you that narcotic seizures and their attempts of smuggling would be highly effective if the president got his own hands into this. And now I kind of understand why the DHS secretary position's been a revolving door, because I know that he is very tough and strict and has high standards on that position, because, he's passionate about keeping our country safe. And no matter what party you're from, Sarah, no matter what your political views are, every customs officer will tell you that the system is very broken, and it has been broken because of politics and because of the people that have been in place that are heads of GHS. And no matter your political view, everybody should be concerned about the security of our country, because there are some scary people and some scary things trying to come through. And if it wasn't for the front line of America, our country would be in grave danger.
And that's right. And for every one of you out there, I tell you, Patricia, she knows what she's talking about. She's been there. You can see her on the documentary as well at Not in Vain, VEIN, USA.com. She, like other Border Patrol officers and people in the DEA, FBI, who are working on the front lines of this every single day, putting their lives on the line. And now we hear this. Now your lives are on the line, too, with COVID-19, and everybody else is on lockdown, except apparently for people trying to cross into Mexico. Patricia, thank you so much for being with me today. I want to bring you back. Please come back to the show.
I will.
And let us know. And we want updates on this. I'll make sure that we get the story out. I'll make sure that people in this administration hear about this. Your voice will not be silenced. I promise you that.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah, so much. And thank you from all the U.S. Customs officers across, the country. Thank you so much for your urgency and for helping us get the word out there and helping us in securing our borders.
I don't even know what to say after listening to her interview other than that's explosive, because it's not what we're being told. And we need to know the facts, and we need to protect our country. And that's what their job is. The job of U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers is to ensure, first and foremost, that our national security is protected. And she was pleading with President Trump to please look at what's happening at the border, to please ask those questions, to find out what's going on at Department of Homeland Security. Why aren't they sending a mandate to stop the flow of traffic in and out of Mexico? This isn't just people that are trying to get back to Mexico that are Mexican citizens. Once again, let me reiterate. These are American citizens or people with green cards that are going over there to shop, go to the vet, visit family, do whatever they got to do over there, and then come back. And no one is being tested on their way back in. There's something wrong here, especially when we stop flights from overseas and when we're testing people. So we have people coming across the border. We don't even know. Their temperature isn't being taken. They aren't being quarantined. We have no idea just what they say, that they haven't been exposed. Yet we're all living, basically in lockdown at our homes. We can't go to work. 26 million Americans have applied for unemployment. This is vitally important that we know what is going on, that the administration understand what is going on at the U.S. southern border. That's roughly 2,000 miles that divides us from Mexico. Roughly 2,000 miles. It is an area that is volatile because the drug cartels, want to control those transit routes into the United States. They are already taking advantage of it. So much so, it's so crazy that Joaquin Chapo Guzman's family, Chapo's here in jail, by the way, is handing out packages. Patricia talked about that after we got off the air. But basically, I saw it in a story, too. I mean, handing out Chapo packages, with rice and toilet paper and some canned food. His daughter's passing him out. It was all over Facebook. That's insanity. But what's even more insane is that we are allowing crisscross traffic that way. And I'm not talking about commerce. I think that's essential. Commerce is essential, and it's important we keep that movement going back and forth. But I don't understand why they're letting people go back and forth. That's a question we don't have an answer for, but it's one that we definitely didn't even know existed until Patricia Cramer came on this show and spoke her mind. And she did it openly. She's not afraid to tell the truth. And I appreciate that, especially from sources that know there's going to be a lot of backlash on them once they talk. Because believe me, she's going to get a lot of backlash, probably from people inside DHS. I think we know who those people are. She named them. She named them here on the Sara Carter Show. And we'll reach out to them as well. And see what their side of the story is. But it's going to be pretty hard to explain that one because I not only talked to Patricia, I talked to people in Texas, and I know it's happening across the border. By the way, we're doing a special tomorrow. We're doing another show. I'm in the same clothes. Full disclaimer. I have been here all day working with Adam Carluccio. I like to say it like that. Very
good.
Italian.
That was a good one.
Was that good?
Yeah, that was perfect.
Adam Carluccio. I'm going to say it one more time.
Very nice.
And Jenny Tear. I'm not going to throw out.
There's no real way.
I know. Did you see that I touched my face? I had like an itch there. I probably violated some kind of law. They're probably going to want me to hand sanitize and
You've
everything.
been doing this for so long at this point today, and you've just been on point for about 4 hours straight. So if you need to touch your face at this point, go ahead.
If I need to touch my face, I'm going to touch my face, America. Look, I'm touching my face.
Take it.
And then I'm going to go wash my hands before I touch anything else.
But no, the bonus show tomorrow is going to be fun. That was a really good one.
Oh, the show is going to be incredible. It's also another explosive Sara Carter Show. We have FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr on, and boy, Adam Schiff, Chairman Adam Schiff of the House Intelligence Committee, Democrat of California. If you are listening to this, I doubt he's listening to this, but if he is, and we'll make sure to tweet that out, you got to watch the show because a lot of it is about you. Well, thank you, America. Thank you for being here with me today at the Sara Carter Show with Jenny Tear and Adam Carluccio.
Yes!
This is Sara Carter, and I am coming to you from my home studio here in the beautiful state of Virginia while we're on lockdown. And I'm thinking about you, and I'm praying for you and everyone else who has been harmed by this virus, both physically and economically. We are here. I want to hear from you. I want to know what you're thinking. And remember, folks, here at the Sara Carter Show, we are taking the story back. And thank you for being a part of my life.